So good morning, Lawrence here again from the Australian Trade and Logistics Corporation up in Sydney. We're delighted to be with Mr. Hiroyuki Nakazato, the Managing Director of JETRO. We're also here with Adam Sims, who is the Project Coordinator and Business Development Manager for JETRO as well. So thank you both for joining me in this short interview.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you
It's
very
very
much.
nice to see you today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So just to kick off, how would you best describe the services of JETRO?
Yes, and our organization is a governmental organization, and which is similar to Austrade. And we promote trade and investment between Japan and foreign countries. And we have 74 overseas offices. And we support Japanese companies for overseas activity, and also we support foreign countries when they consider to establish the office in Japan.
Fantastic. Great.
And also we support Japanese foods export to other countries, and also we do research activities.
Fantastic, great. So you're really at that as you said, similar to Austrade, where you provide that springboard foundation support.
Great.
Yeah,
that's right.
Fantastic, great. And who would be, in Australia, who would be a typical type of an Australian business who may come to JETRO for support?
Yes, and as I said, in case of Australian companies, basically we support the Australian companies which consider to establish the office in Japan.
Great.
Yeah.
This is a great initiative with the opportunity to really help launch into Japan in a supported way instead of trying to do it themselves. And I know you have the business support centres and some of the other opportunities that we briefly discussed earlier. So those are great support networks. So how many offices did you have in the business support centres?
Yes, and business support center in Japan, we have six.
6 offices across Japan.
Tokyo, Osaka, and other 4 cities.
Fantastic. Great. No, those are great initiatives, and really that can make a huge difference for Australian companies to go into the market and really develop those relationships with the support of JETRO and being amongst other people as well in the support centres. So it's a big opportunity. So with Australian, and I know the Japan-Australia relationship's been around for many decades, and it's been a growing, very strong relationship. How are Australian companies perceived by Japanese consumers and businesses?
Yes, and as you mentioned, Australia and Japan have a very good relationship for a long time, and Australian company is a very much sophisticated company. I think. Would you like to add?
Yeah, I agree. I visited Japan recently, and in all the stores and shops, you can see quite a lot of Australian products. In the supermarket, for example, Aussie beef is very prominent. And I think in Japan, definitely the Australian products have an image of quality and value.
Right, fantastic. And I think there's a lot of premium Australian product that sits perfectly within the Japanese market, and it's something that I think is always growing, and in many other markets, Australian companies, not so much recently, but in the past, have tried to assimilate their products to fit that market. But I think with Japan, it's important to keep that Australian feel, but also maybe put surrounding marketing material or the story behind that company to the Japan market is important.
And I'd like to add one thing.
Sure.
Japan and Australia EPA was implemented about 4 years ago. And it promotes trade and investment furthermore. And also TPP 11, CPTPP, was implemented on 30th of December.
So we're looking forward to that to be ratified, and that'll be through. So are there any sectors with those two that have benefited more than other sectors? Is it the food, beverage sector? What are the sort of key sectors?
I think for the CPTPP, there are already a number of agricultural products under JEPA which have getting reduced tariffs, but that's actually increasing in volume now. So there are a number of different food products, Australian food products, that will have the decreased tariffs reaching to zero in the future that weren't under the existing agreement. So it's getting broader.
Fantastic. Great.
Great. When we see the products to Japan from Australia, and coal is number one. Coal and steel, and the third one is I think beef. In case of export from Japan to Australia, as you could imagine, automobile.
Yes,
that's right.
That's right.
But anyway, we'd like to increase the food products export from Japan to Australia also.
That's right. And what are there examples now already in Australia of Japanese food products that you can think of?
Yes, and Japanese sake, for example, is getting popular.
And that's I think as Australian consumers really have diversified their taste in sake and other spirits and distillery products. So that's definitely been well received.
And also scallop is very popular.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Fresh. So fantastic.
In addition to talking about Japanese food, recently an item that JETRO has been working heavily to promote is actually a Japanese Wagyu beef.
That's right.
So,
made in Japan.
Made in Japan.
Bred in Japan, I should say.
Yes. For a long time in the Australian market, we have Wagyu, but it's all been Aussie Wagyu. So actually, just starting from last year.
I think I heard about this story where it was actually a crossbreed between a Wagyu Australian breed and another Japanese breed. Is that the same story?
Yes, actually, the characteristics or the standards for Wagyu are a little bit different between Aussie Wagyu and Japanese Wagyu. For Aussie Wagyu, as long as one of the parent cows is Wagyu breed, then the product can be called Wagyu. So you have these kind of half breeds, whereas in Japan, has to be 100% purebred Wagyu beef. So it's actually a little bit different. And recently we've been working to promote Japanese Wagyu beef into the Australian market.
That's right.
Well, I've got a bit of a history, as we talked about with my beef exports to Japan. So a bit of a very big fan of Wagyu with the marbling and the fat content, and when it's cooked, it's beautiful. Very tender.
Also, I'd like to add a couple of things.
Sure.
And LNG,
liquid.
It's from Australia and to Japan is also very important product.
Yes. So I think from memory, I haven't been for a few years, but a lot of most of the taxis are on LPG there, and they use LNG quite extensively in industry.
And also talking about beef, of course we Japanese people enjoy Aussie beef.
Yes.
So anyway, I'd like to ask Australian people to enjoy Japanese Wagyu also.
That's right.
And also I like Australian wine, so I'd like to ask Australian people to enjoy Japanese sake.
Yes,
both ways.
Well, that's where the relationship has been really great. It's there are so many complementary products, and they really sit well together. You can enjoy, a Japanese Wagyu steak with a nice red Australian red wine, or you can have a sake as well with some beef as well.
Both ways.
That's right. That's fantastic. Great.
Okay.
So, we talked about some of those sectors, and those are the current in the market. Do you have any sort of feel or idea around some future emerging sectors?
Yes, and actually, it is not sector itself, but anyway, innovation cooperation. It's a very important area. Between Australia and Japan. And we need to support startup companies for both ways. So that is why we are going to organize a startup ecosystem and opportunities business seminar.
I've seen this, and this
in
is
Sydney and Melbourne. Please add.
So Japan across the board is really looking to attract innovation to the country, and startup is just one part of that, which is really a new focus that's kind of emerged in the last couple of years, and now the Japanese government has kind of clearly identified startups, a great source of innovation, and we're looking to attract more and more to the country. And now JETRO is kind of putting our hat on as well and saying, we're getting on board, we're looking to support these innovative startups to get into the Japanese market and bring their tech or AI into the country, and
Australia's been great with R&D and those events, just to mention that for our members. So we've got this Friday, the 1st of March in Melbourne, at 4:30 p.m. and we can put the links onto our site as well for this video. And coming Monday and the 4th of March here in Sydney as well at the Sydney Startup Hub. So definitely get along to those. Adam, probably if we can give your contact details later, then Adam's the person to speak to, and I'm sure you'd love to see Australian innovative companies to come along.
Definitely.
That's right.
Yeah.
So that means talk to JETRO.
Yes, absolutely.
It's one of our brochures.
That's great. And I think, my experience, we've had a great history of automotive companies and even automotive supply chains here in Australia. And unfortunately, manufacturing doesn't really exist now in Australia, but a lot of those companies who used to add to that supply chain have still got some great R&D, some great innovation, which they could potentially, go back to Japan with and take into not just automotive sectors, but potentially other complementary industries.
That's right.
So that's fantastic. So some of where does Australia sit in Japan? I know it's sort of evolving, and some of these agreements have influenced that. But where does Australia sit with Japan's trading partner? From memory, I know it's moved a bit.
Okay. And if we see from Australian side, Japan is the second destination of exports. And excuse me. And in case of import from other countries to Australia, Japan is ranked as number 3. And if we see from Japan side, Australia is the 9th export destination for Japan. And 3rd in case of import from other countries to Japan. So because as I mentioned, coal steel, and LNG. And beef. As one of our obviously those major commodities really put us high up in that rank. Fantastic. And with the current consumers in Japan, so obviously they're a very sophisticated market of consumers. From an age and demographic, how has that shifted? Or where there's things like aged care that Australia's quite good at. Is there an older population, younger population? How does that sort of work? Yes, and anyway, as you kindly introduced, Japanese market is very sophisticated market. But anyway, and also, you can say, sophisticated market and innovation hub, business-friendly infrastructure, and comfortable living.
Very comfortable.
But anyway, as you could imagine, Japan is the population, elder people's population will increase. Would you like to add something?
I think in terms of the consumer market, definitely there's the growing age sector and growing an aging population. So services to the elderly is becoming more and more important than it was before. In terms of the younger generation, similar to Australia, Japanese youth and Australian youth are very independent, very have a knowledgeable about using the latest tech and things like that. So I think it's kind of the same as Australia. So
I think especially the younger demographic have got so many similarities. They've got a huge appetite for new technology. They really embrace new innovation, and Australia can be a very good test market because of those type of products take up as well and feedback.
I think for Japanese businesses as well, things are starting to change a little bit. The Japanese government has been promoting a change in the work-life balance. Japan traditionally has been a very kind of heavy on the business side and working long hours and overtime. But that's changing a lot, and especially for younger companies and startup companies are very active in promoting a good
balance. That's important. Absolutely. As much as it's great to succeed. I think definitely Japan has taken those steps now to really support families and individuals as well, which is great. That's fantastic. So, with how much do you think Australian businesses, especially some of the SMEs, I mean, obviously the big end of town are very well averse with Japan and some of those big trading commodities, but for Australian SMEs, do you believe that they've got enough knowledge about those opportunities in Japan?
No, I don't think so. Because if we see the investment into Australia and the FDI stock from foreign countries, Japan is ranked as second. After USA. So that means we invest a lot to Australia.
Yes.
But if we see the investment from Australia to Japan, it is very small.
Yes.
So that is why we promote this kind of activities.
Innovation.
So then again, talk to JETRO first.
Yes.
Would you like to add something?
So the Australian economy has been growing very steadily. I think Australia is ranked first in terms of growth for developed economies. Whereas in Japan, the economic growth rate is not as high as Australia, so that's why the Japanese government is really interested and really happy to attract investment from foreign countries, from Australia to Japan.
And I think that the new emerging innovative companies have got greater similarities with Japan consumers and companies alike. So there's probably fantastic opportunity for, as we mentioned before, R&D transfer, joint ventures, whole range of opportunities to work together and invest as a partnership in Japan to really grow that market. Some of what would be the first steps if we want to support our members and the broader community with targeting Japan for investment and export and trade growth? So would you recommend, obviously you mentioned talk to JETRO first, so that's a sound advice, and you guys have got the experience, you've got the local support on the ground in Japan as well. Apart from that, is there any other tips or advice you'd like to give our members and audience about entering the Japan market or doing business in Japan?
I think a lot of people are kind of shy away from Japan when they're looking at Asia and tend to maybe consider China because, of course, China has massive population and a big consumer base. But Japan is still one of the largest economies in the world, and it's been like that for a long time. That's not going to change. So there's still a huge market there, and it really has the strength for that. It's been going for such a long time, highly sophisticated, safe to do business, very strong protections for IP and trademarks.
And those are important factors, absolutely.
Yes, so really it's a kind of like an innovation hub and a safe place to do business. So companies who are considering Asia, it really doesn't make sense to not include Japan.
Sure, as part of that.
It's a huge potential market there.
No, fantastic. Great advice, Adam, and I think that's definitely encouraging for SMEs especially. These events that you're putting on, both in Melbourne and Sydney, I'm sure are just a start of how you can support some of those companies, especially the innovative companies who want to really bridge those opportunities across and work with consumers and other businesses. So these are fantastic events. I'm sure you're probably having more throughout the year and followed up. But no, those are great. On a personal note, you've been here since 2017. So what do you enjoy about Australia, Nakazato?
Yes, and anyway, I like Australian people. Because Australian people is so kind to foreign people.
Thank you.
So and also on weekend I enjoy playing tennis.
Oh really? Okay, great.
And also during winter time, I enjoy skiing.
Oh yes,
because I am a qualified ski instructor.
Really? Wow.
Of the Ski Association of Japan.
A lot of Australians go to Japan for ski holidays.
So I can talk about the skiing in Japan. For 1 hour or 2 hours.
Fantastic. We'll have to do another interview for that later. We can maybe do a ski trade mission for companies who can provide. You never know. So no, that's fantastic. And obviously the skiing and tennis are great. To keeping fit with the Australian sports. Have you? I'm based in Melbourne, so we have the Australian rules football. Here, obviously, Japan's got a great rugby team as well.
Yeah, that's right.
So have you been to the rugby here in Sydney?
Not that I watch rugby and cricket on TV. But I play baseball also.
Oh, really? Okay.
Wow. So I'm interested in cricket, but it's difficult to understand the rule of cricket.
Baseball, it can be a lot faster than cricket. Nine innings, I think.
I'm used to play cricket.
I used to play cricket when I was back in high school, and I really love watching cricket, so I try to teach a little bit to Mr. Nakazato about the rules, but yeah, it's a confusing area, even for me sometimes.
Fantastic. No, well, I really appreciate both of you taking the time to talk with me today and really give this a refreshing insight to and a bit of a motivation to get Australian SMEs and our members to, as you said before, Adam, rethink Japan. And really, it's not as hard as people might think because it is a sophisticated, complex market, but it's a very rewarding and very loyal market as well. So that once you've developed your brand and your partnerships there, that the way of doing business in Japan is a very long-term process.
So I'd like to add two things. So anyway, we can cooperate each other.
Absolutely. Yes.
And also I'd like to ask Adam to talk about impression of your business trip to Japan last month.
So I was very lucky to have a business trip to Japan last month, and including visiting JETRO Tokyo headquarters. So actually, JETRO has a huge network of offices across Japan. Pretty much every prefecture we covered, and in Japan, there's really kind of a growth of support for innovation. I was very lucky to, when I was in Tokyo, visit some co-working spaces and some companies who are supporting startups. And in Osaka as well, there's really a push to support innovation. Lots and lots of events happening. Lots of Japanese companies getting on board and investing in new startups and things like that. So definitely existing businesses should definitely consider Japan, but even small businesses and startups as well should start looking to Japan.
I think that's where the opportunity really is. And one of the things that you've just mentioned there, Adam, has given me another point I think is very valuable for JETRO to offer, is that as an SME, you hear about Japan, and most people know Tokyo and Osaka, but there's other prefectures that might be even better suited for their products. Or services, for that matter.
There's a huge regional areas in Japan which outside of Tokyo and Osaka, but still quite big and very large consumer base and large GDP, comparable to many European countries.
Absolutely.
And the Japanese government is very interested in promoting investment in regional areas, the same as in Australia as well. And there are attractive subsidies, things like that. So if a company wants to set up in a regional location, that wouldn't be available in Tokyo, for example. So it's a great choice.
And those are great target markets that you can advise them on as well. So fantastic advice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. All right. Well, thank you for today's interview. As you said before, we'd very much love to collaborate with you further and do some further work with SMEs, our members, bilaterally between Japan and Australia. And look forward to keeping this dialogue going and hopefully check in again on a regular basis and update the members on some new exciting initiatives. Don't forget to come along to these events. Just to reiterate, that Friday, 1st of March, 4:30 at YBF Ventures in Burke Street in Melbourne, and on Monday, the 4th of March here in Sydney, back in Sydney at the Sydney Startup Hub in York Street. So we'll pass Adam's details on. But if you can get there, please get along, and you'll definitely won't regret it. It's great. Thanks so much. Thank you
very much. Nice to see you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.